A beggar asks for a plate of food for her hungry son. But when the millionaire looks into her eyes, a miracle happens. The wind sliced through the crisp autumn afternoon, sending dry leaves swirling across the cracked pavement of the town square in Boise, Idaho. Jenna clutched her threadbare coat tighter, but the cold wasn't just in the air, it was in her heart. The sting of her husband Derek's betrayal lingered like an open wound that wouldn't heal. He hadn't just cheated with another woman, he'd built a secret life, a hidden family, while Jenna, oblivious, wove fragile dreams around a home that was never real. Worse, the late-night whispers on the phone, the evenings he came home reeking of whiskey and lies, weren't just signs of infidelity. Derek was tangled in dirty deals, criminal schemes she only uncovered when the cops knocked on her door, asking questions she couldn't answer. Jenna held her 2-year-old son, Max, close, trying to hush his soft whimpers. His small, perfect face was pale, his wide eyes pleading for something she couldn't provide, a warm meal, a safe place, a future. She rocked him gently, humming a lullaby her mother used to sing, but her voice quavered, swallowed by tears she refused to let fall. She couldn't break, not in front of him. The beat-up RV, inherited from a grandfather long gone, was their only shelter. Parked in a forgotten corner of Boise where the asphalt gave way to weeds and loneliness, it creaked under the wind's weight and the burden of uncertainty. Inside, there was just the bare minimum: a thin mattress, a patched blanket, a few clothes folded with care as if order could preserve what was left of her pride. Hunger was a constant shadow. By day, Jenna roamed the streets, her stomach growling like a distant storm, collecting cans or chasing odd jobs that didn't ask for ID, because Derek, before vanishing, had taken that too: her identity, her history, her trust. At night, fear wrapped around her tighter than any blanket. Every creak of the RV sounded like footsteps. Every shadow at the window was the ghost of her past coming to haunt her. What if he found her? What if he knew she'd fled with Max? What if the hard-faced men she'd once seen in their living room, the ones Derek dealt with, came for them? Paranoia was an invisible chain, squeezing her chest until she could barely breathe. That afternoon, the square was nearly empty. The sky, heavy with grey clouds, promised rain, and the air smelled of wet earth and longing. Jenna sat on a weathered wooden bench, its slats groaning under her weight. Max, in her lap, clutched a makeshift toy, a scrap of wood she'd roughly carved to look like a car. He spun it between his tiny fingers, but his whimpers returned, faint but persistent, like the ticking of a clock counting down time she didn't have. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, stroking his dark curls. "Mommy's gonna figure it out." But the solution felt like a mirage, shimmering just out of reach. Before we dive into this story, I'd like to ask for your support. Subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Thanks, and let's keep going. That's when she saw him. A man crossed the square with steady strides, his dark overcoat swaying with his steps. He stood out from the usual crowd, not rushed like the workers or indifferent like those who ignored the misery around them. There was an air of quiet command in his movements, as if the world bent to his presence. His graying temples and the gleam of a watch on his wrist hinted at wealth, but his eyes held something else, a flicker, maybe, of someone who'd known pain. Jenna hesitated. Asking for help felt like swallowing broken glass. Every word hurt, cutting into her stubborn pride. But Max's whimpers, that sound that tore her heart, were stronger than any shame. She stood, legs shaky, and approached the man. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice hoarse, barely above a whisper. He stopped, his hazel eyes meeting hers, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. The wind stilled, the leaves paused their dance, and even Max's cries hushed, as if the universe held its breath. "Could you help me get some food for my son?" she asked, clutching Max tighter, as if he were her anchor against the humiliation. "Please," she added, almost inaudible, eyes down, heart racing. The man, William Carter, a name Boise whispered with respect, didn't answer right away. He looked at Jenna, then at Max, and something in his face shifted. Not pity, but something deeper, as if he saw in her a reflection of his own past. "Come with me," he said, his voice deep but not cold. He led her to a cozy diner at the square's edge, where the smell of chili and fresh cornbread filled the air. stirring memories of better days. He sat them at a corner table, ordered a full meal, mac and cheese, grilled chicken, a slice of pie for Max, and paid without a second thought. "Eat slowly," he said, standing. "If you need anything else, just ask. I'll leave some cash here for the bill." Jenna wanted to thank him, but the words caught in her throat, choked by gratitude and suspicion. Who was this man? Why would he help a stranger? As Max smeared pie on his cheeks, devouring it with tiny hands, she watched William walk away, his overcoat blending into the crowd. Something about him tugged at her, not just his kindness, but his eyes. They held a story, a wound he carried as carefully as she hid her own. That night in the RV, as Max slept curled against her, Jenna couldn't sleep. His small body's warmth was her only certainty, but her mind spun like a carousel out of control. Who was that man? Why had he helped? And why did she feel this wasn't the end, but the start of something she couldn't yet grasp? The wind howled outside, and the RV shuddered, as if answering her questions with secrets she couldn't decode. What Jenna didn't know was that, while she tried to keep Max warm under the thin blanket, William was in his sprawling Boise home, staring out at the city's twinkling lights. He couldn't shake her image, not just the woman, but the strength in her gaze, the dignity in her pain. He knew that weight. Years ago, he'd been a street kid, begging for scraps, until a kind stranger changed his path. Now a hotel tycoon, his properties gleaming like gems across the city, he was still shadowed by loneliness. The darkness wrapped the RV like a heavy cloak, broken only by the wind's distant wail and a stray dog's bark. Jenna, still awake, held Max close, her eyes fixed on the flimsy door, where a shadow seemed to flicker under the dim streetlight. Her heart pounded, a drumbeat of fear that Derek, or someone worse, was lurking, ready to steal what little she had left. When the noise faded and the shadow vanished, she exhaled, telling herself it was just the wind, just her exhausted mind playing tricks. Max slept soundly, unaware of the world's weight on her shoulders. She hugged him tighter, as if she could shield him from every uncertainty. The next morning, the sky cleared, a shy sun barely warming the square. Jenna took Max to play near the same bench where she'd met William. The boy chased a butterfly, his giggles ringing like bells of hope. She watched, her heart torn between love for him and the ache of not knowing how to provide. The diner meal had been a reprieve, but hunger was creeping back, a shadow that never left. She smoothed her worn coat, hiding a dirt stain on the sleeve, and whispered a silent prayer. "Please, God, show me the way." Across the square, William parked his sleek black sedan. He wasn't sure why he'd returned, or maybe he was but couldn't admit it. Jenna's eyes, fierce yet desperate, haunted him. He walked to the bench, now empty, and sat, his overcoat folded over his arm. The air smelled of damp grass and coffee from a nearby cart, and for a moment he closed his eyes, letting memories of his own childhood wash over him, a barefoot boy, hungry, dreaming of the impossible. He knew Jenna's pain, even without her story. In the distance, he spotted Max, his curls wild, grinning as he drew circles in the dirt with a stick. Jenna was nearby, sitting on the grass, her eyes never leaving her son. There was a fierceness in her watchfulness, like a lioness guarding her cub. William hesitated, a mix of admiration and something unnamed tightening his chest. He stood, driven by an urge he couldn't explain, and started toward them, but stopped. He didn't want to scare her or seem like another man with ulterior motives, so he followed discreetly as Jenna scooped Max up and headed to the city's edge, where the RV sat. The RV was a relic, rust creeping along its edges, paint peeling to reveal years of neglect. Yet there was a sacred care in its details. Faded curtains neatly hung, a clean step at the entrance, a tiny plant in a makeshift pot by the window. From behind a tree, William watched Jenna tuck Max into the mattress inside. A pang hit him, anger at a world that left her like this, and a burning need to help. That night, as Boise slept and silence blanketed the vacant lot, William returned. He carried a grocery bag, rice, beans, powdered milk, fresh apples, chosen carefully at a nearby store. He left it at the RV's door, silent, traceless. Driving away, his heart felt lighter, as if he'd left not just food, but a piece of his hope. The ritual continued. Each evening, as the sky burned orange and purple, William left something at the RV: diapers, cookies, a soft blanket smelling of cedar. Jenna found the gifts at dawn, and though she never saw the giver, her heart began to suspect. It was him. It had to be. The man in the overcoat, with eyes heavy with untold stories. Each bag was a breath of relief, a thread of hope she clung to. She stored the items like treasures, whispering to Max, "Someone's watching over us, baby. Someone up there still believes in us." But life in the RV wasn't just hope. Fear lingered, especially on nights when noises returned. Footsteps, shadows, whispers that might be the wind or something darker. Jenna woke startled, heart racing, imagining Derek or his cronies lurking. She didn't know he was far away, tangled in his own mess, but his shadow still hunted her, a ghost that wouldn't leave. The gifts helped, but the cold still bit. Max, in his innocence, played on, but Jenna saw he was thinner, his big eyes bigger in his pale face. One sunny morning, as Max kicked a rubber ball he'd found in the square, Jenna decided she had to thank him. She couldn't pretend the gifts were chance anymore. When she saw William approaching, another bag in hand, her heart leapt. He looked different. No overcoat, just a navy shirt and tailored pants, but with the same air of carrying the world. She took a deep breath, summoning courage, and walked to him, Max trailing, clutching her hand. "Sir," she said, her voice steady but soft, "I'm the one getting your gifts. They've helped so much. I don't know how to thank you." William paused, surprised, but a shy smile crossed his face. "No need to thank me," he said, his voice warm. "I just wanted to help." They talked briefly, cautious, like strangers feeling their way in the dark. Jenna shared carefully that she was alone, that Max's father had shattered her, but spared the details. William listened, eyes locked on hers, feeling a spark he thought long dead. Connection. Before leaving, he handed her a plain card with his name and number. "Call if you need anything," he said. Jenna took it, fingers trembling slightly, and nodded. "Thank you, William," she said, his name like a secret she'd just unlocked. He smiled, a smile that held promises, and walked away, leaving her heart lighter but brimming with questions. That night, tucking the card safely in the RV, Jenna felt a new spark. Trust, something she hadn't felt in months. God was watching over her, she was sure of it. The next morning the sun offered faint warmth, but the air was thick with the scent of coming rain. Jenna woke to find Max's forehead burning, his curls damp against his skin. He was too quiet, his eyes bright, but not with their usual spark, a feverish gleam that twisted her gut. "Max, baby, what's wrong?" she asked, voice tight, touching his forehead. It blazed and he only mumbled, "Mommy," before closing his eyes, exhausted. Panic surged like ice through her veins. No time to hesitate. She wrapped him in the cedar-scented blanket William had left and ran to the nearest clinic, her bag bouncing, heart pounding like a war drum. The clinic was chaos, crying babies, sharp disinfectant, and too many voices. Jenna held Max tightly, begging for help, but the receptionist, eyes weary, just said, "Wait your turn, ma'am, it could be hours." Hours? Max didn't have hours. His face was paler, his breaths shallow, each weak whimper a knife in her chest. Desperate, Jenna bolted, instinct driving her to the private hospital a few blocks away. Its glass facade gleamed like a beacon, but reality crushed her. No insurance, no ID, she was a ghost. "No payment, no service," the clerk said, eyes glued to her screen. Jenna pleaded, voice cracking, tears streaming, but was dismissed, just another problem to ignore. With Max in her arms, hotter, weaker, she sank to the cold lobby floor, despair clawing her throat. She was out of options. Then, like a lightning bolt, she remembered the card. With shaking hands, she grabbed her nearly dead phone and texted William, "I need your help." She hit send, closed her eyes, and prayed he'd see it. William was in a meeting, his suit crisp, but his mind heavy. He was discussing budgets, but his thoughts drifted to the RV, to Jenna, to the boy who played with sticks like they were gold. His phone buzzed, and he saw the message. The room faded. Without a word, he stood, excused himself, and rushed out, heart racing. He called Jenna, her sobbing voice all he needed to hear. "Where are you?" he asked, already speeding toward the hospital. When Jenna saw him, something in her broke and mended at once. William didn't hesitate. He ran to her, eyes wide at Max's frail form. Without a word, he took the boy, holding him with a gentleness that felt instinctive, the smell of sweat and fever sharp. "Stay here," he told Jenna, then strode to the desk, voice like iron. "Immediate care. Now, I'll cover everything." The clerk, stunned by his authority and the name, William Carter, the hotel magnate, didn't argue. Within minutes, Max was on a gurney, surrounded by doctors. Jenna stayed close, holding his tiny hand, tears falling as the doctor examined him. "Respiratory infection," the doctor said, adjusting his glasses. "We'll treat and monitor. He'll be okay." Jenna nodded, relief fragile as a tightrope. William stood by her, saying little, but his presence was a lifeline. He paid the bills without flinching, swiping his card. Jenna wanted to thank him, but words dissolved in her throat. All she could do was look at him, eyes full of gratitude and something deeper, a bond neither could name. Unbeknownst to them, a hotel employee, at the hospital for a checkup, recognized William. Curious, she filmed him carrying Max, Jenna beside him, looking like a family in crisis. The video, shared in a staff chat with the caption, "Boss has a secret family," spread like wildfire. By evening, Boise was buzzing about William Carter's secret. Jenna learned of the video the next morning, as Max, medicated and cooler, slept in the hospital bed. A nurse, smirking, showed her phone. "This you, right?" she asked. Jenna's stomach dropped. The video exposed her vulnerability, and the caption implied a lie. But worse was the fear that Derek would see it. What if he knew where she was? What if he came back, dragging his violence and secrets? What if he targeted William, the man who'd saved her son? She glanced at William, who'd arrived to settle more bills, talking on his phone across the room. He seemed unaware of the gossip, but she knew she had to warn him. Before she could, he hung up and approached, face serious. "I know about the video," he said, reading her mind. "I'm handling it." He didn't elaborate, but his steady voice eased her, if only slightly. That afternoon, William did the unexpected. Instead of dodging the rumors, he posted a video on his social media. In his office, Boise's skyline glowing behind him, he spoke with raw honesty. "I grew up on the streets," he began, voice steady. "Lost my parents young. I learned life's tough, but a single act of kindness can change everything. Recently, I met a woman fighting to save her son. She asked for nothing but help for him. Helping her showed me what real love is, the kind that gives without expecting anything back. I never had a kid. I didn't know this love. Until now." He looked at the camera, eyes shining with resolve and vulnerability. "Jenna and Max aren't my secret family. They're people who taught me there's still warmth in a cold world. If helping someone in need sparks gossip, let them talk. I'd do it again." His video went viral, but differently. Speculation turned to admiration. Messages of support flooded in, and Jenna and Max's story became a beacon of hope. But Jenna didn't see them. She was by Max's side, watching him smile as his fever broke. She thanked God and William, but fear lingered. What if Derek saw the video? What if he knew she was aided by a man like William? As she wrestled with this, a nurse brought a bouquet of white roses with a card. "For you," she said. Jenna opened it, expecting William's name, but the words chilled her. "You can't run forever." No signature. Who sent it? How did they know she was here? Glancing out the hospital window, she saw a figure on the sidewalk, staring up at the building. Something about the rigid posture, the way the coat swayed, felt familiar, a ghost from her past. "Please watch him," Jenna told the nurse, voice shaky but firm. The nurse nodded, tucking Max's blanket. Jenna took a deep breath, the hospital's cold air burning her lungs, and descended the stairs, each step a test of courage. The hallway felt endless, her footsteps echoing like a drum. Outside, the man was closer, his face lit by a street lamp. It was Vince, an old friend of Derek's, unseen since her life felt like a fragile fairy tale. "Jenna," he said, voice rough, heavy with something she couldn't read. "Saw you in the video. Didn't know you were like this." He gestured vaguely, as if homeless was too heavy to say. Jenna crossed her arms, body tense, braced for the blow that always came with Derek's memory. "What do you want, Vince?" she asked, voice sharp but trembling. He looked down, shoulders slumped, and spoke. Words pained. "Derek's dead. 2 weeks ago. Botched robbery. He didn't make it." The world stopped. The air thickened, the smell of wet pavement and car exhaust overwhelming. Jenna's legs buckled and she nearly fell. Derek, the man who'd shattered her trust, who'd left her with nothing but a son and an RV, was gone. The fear that haunted her, the shadow that woke her in panic, was no more. But instead of relief, a cold paralysis gripped her, as if the past had frozen in her chest. Vince went on, oblivious to her turmoil. "He left some things, Jenna, not much, but a house, some furniture, maybe cash. You're the mother of his kid. You could claim it, get something for Max. You deserve better." He scribbled a number on a scrap of paper and handed it to her. "Call if you need help. I saw the videos. Know you're fighting. I'm not here to mess things up." Jenna took the paper, fingers numb, and mumbled a faint, "Thanks." "I'll call later," she said, voice flat, mind reeling. She needed to get back to Max, to anchor herself in her only certainty. "Take care of your boy," Vince said, then vanished around the corner, his coat flapping like a curtain closing. Back in the room, Jenna sat by Max, heart still racing. He opened his eyes, a weak smile crossing his face, and her tears fell, hot and silent. Derek was dead. The monster was gone. But what did it mean? A house, some assets. It was a chance at stability, but also a chain to the past. She wanted nothing of his, but what about Max? He deserved more than an RV, more than uncertainty. The confusion choked her, and she knew she needed guidance. With trembling fingers, she called William. He answered instantly, voice calm like a lifeline. "How's Max?" he asked before she could speak. She spilled everything: Max's fever, his recovery, Vince's visit, Derek's death. The words stumbled out, each one raw. "I don't know what to do, William," she admitted, voice breaking. "He said I might have a claim, but I just want to move on." William was quiet, and she could almost hear his thoughts. "You need to close that chapter, Jenna," he said finally. "Go to the police, file the claims, see what's yours. Not for Derek, but for Max. He deserves a future. So do you. Don't let the past hold you back." His voice was firm, warm, steadying her. "I'll drive you if you want. Just say when." Jenna nodded, though he couldn't see. "Thank you," she whispered, feeling less alone. Hanging up, she looked at Max, playing with his fingers, and vowed to do whatever it took for him. Days later, with Max recovering, Jenna followed William's advice. At the police station, she tackled forms and questions with a mother's resolve. The process was slow, but Vince was right. There was a house, some money, but also Derek's other family, with kids. Jenna knew she didn't want to build on Derek's ruins. She needed something new for her and Max. That's when William made an offer that changed everything. "I'm opening a new hotel downtown," he said one afternoon at the hospital, bringing a teddy bear for Max. "Need someone trustworthy at the front desk. It's not fancy, but it's a start. What do you think?" Jenna hesitated, pride clashing with hope, but Max's smile, clutching the bear, decided it. "I'll take it," she said, voice steady, eyes bright with purpose. The job came with company daycare, where Max could play, learn, and eat well. Jenna rented a tiny studio apartment, simple but clean, with white walls smelling of fresh paint and possibility. For the first time in months, she slept without the RV's creaks, without fear of shadows. The apartment's window overlooked a tree-lined street, and sometimes she'd stand there, watching leaves dance, feeling the past's weight lighten, like a stone smoothed by a river. William became a constant. He called daily, checking on Max, on her, on their new life. Sometimes he'd show up with warm bagels, their scent filling the studio. Other times he brought a toy for Max, a colorful ball, a noisy truck. He'd sit on the floor with the boy, learning his cries, knowing when he needed a hug or just a grin. "Ever changed a diaper?" Jenna teased one night as William fumbled with Max. "Nope," he admitted, laughing, the sound warming the small space. Over time, William's visits became routine. He'd arrive with coffee, a story, or just his presence, enough to make Jenna feel safe. For the first time, she didn't wake with her heart racing, bracing for the next blow. The studio, with its sparse furniture and Max's laughter, was a home, and William, with his quiet care, was often part of it. One night, as Jenna tidied the tiny kitchen while Max slept, her phone lit up with a text from Vince. "Any news on the assets?" She paused but didn't reply. The past was there, but she didn't want to look back. The present, Max giggling, William bringing bagels, the smell of coffee at dawn, was what mattered. She smiled, heart light, and put the phone away. For the first time, the future felt within reach, something she could shape herself. Work at the hotel gave Jenna a rhythm she'd never imagined. She rose early, donned the Navy uniform, brushed Max's curls, and dropped him at daycare, where he laughed with other kids, his cheeks rosy again. At the front desk, she greeted guests, managed bookings, and learned the system with a grit that surprised her. The scent of polished wood and the hum of lobby chatter replaced the RV's creaks and lonely silence. Each shift was a step away from the past, a brick in a new foundation. William stopped by often, sometimes with a flimsy excuse, a form to sign, a meeting, but Jenna knew he came for her and Max. One evening, Max, sleepy-eyed, grabbed William's hand and mumbled, "Uncle, stay?" Jenna laughed, caught off guard, but saw William's hesitation, a mix of warmth and doubt. "If Mommy's okay with it," he said, glancing at her. Her cheeks warmed, heart quickening. "Sure," she said softly, but no snoring. He chuckled, the sound filling the studio, and that night he slept on the narrow couch, draped in a cedar-scented blanket, while Max slept soundly, knowing his uncle was there. Those nights grew frequent. William came after work, sometimes weary, but always with something for Max, a storybook, a new truck, or just patience to hear the boys' jumbled daycare tales. Jenna watched, awed, as William learned Max's language, the cry for hunger, the giggle for a cuddle, the quiet for company. He was clumsy, spilling bottles or fumbling diapers, but his tenderness made Jenna's heart ache. She, who'd sworn off trusting men, felt her walls crumbling. One weekend, William suggested something new. "Come see my place," he said, almost shy, over coffee in the studio. "Lots of room for Max to play." Jenna hesitated, her protective instincts flaring, but Max's excited, "Let's go, Mommy," won out. William's Boise home wasn't the cold mansion she'd pictured. It was warm, with sunlit windows, oak furniture smelling of polish, and a garden where lavender scented the air. Max tore across the lawn, giggling, as William chased him, playing a gentle monster who ate happy kids. Jenna sat on the porch, a mug of tea warming her hands, watching them. Her heart swelled with an unnamed emotion. For the first time in years, she smiled, a real smile, not the forced one for Max, but one that warmed her soul like the sun on the grass. William returned, breathless, Max on his shoulders, and sat beside her. "He's special, you know," he said, eyes on the boy now chasing a butterfly. "So are you." The words were simple, but when she met his gaze, she saw a promise, unspoken but felt. Weekends at the house became routine. Jenna and Max brought a backpack, and what started as visits grew into something more. They didn't want to leave, not because the studio was small, but because William's home felt like theirs. Max slept in a room with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, and Jenna slept without loneliness. She still worked, still mothered Max fiercely, but now there was belonging, like the life was finally aligning. One calm night on the porch, under a starlit sky smelling of lavender and damp earth, William and Jenna sat close, the silence as comfortable as an old friend. Max slept inside, worn out from play. William held a glass of wine, but his eyes were on Jenna, her face glowing in the moonlight. "You've given me more than any deal ever could," he said, voice raw. "I built so much, Jenna, but never had real purpose. You and Max, you gave me a reason to live." He paused, words fragile. "I didn't know what family was until you." Jenna turned, tears glinting in her eyes. She thought of her journey, Derek's betrayal, the RV, hunger, fear, and how against all odds she'd found this man who asked for nothing, only gave. "You showed me I could live again," she said, voice thick. They sat in silence, the air alive with something wordless. Jenna's heart raced, not from fear but possibility. She believed love could be a steady light, not a burning flame, one that healed and grew. The next Saturday, William proposed a change. "Let's hit the park," he said, eyes twinkling with a secret plan. Jenna laughed, picturing the square where it all began. The bench, Max's cries, the biting cold. "That park?" she asked, nostalgic. "The very one," he replied, grinning mysteriously. Max, overhearing, bounced with excitement, clutching a bucket of toys. "Let's go," Jenna gave in. The park was transformed. Autumn had given way to early spring, with yellow wildflowers dotting the grass and the air sweet with blooming petals. The tree that once shaded the RV stood tall, its leaves swaying like whispers of the past. Max ran to the grass laughing, joining kids building sandcastles and chasing butterflies. Jenna, in a light dress, barefoot on the soft ground, watched him, her smile radiating faith and gratitude. She'd prayed for days like this, kneeling in the RV, tears endless. She never imagined God would lead her from a desert to an oasis. William stood beside her, hands in his pockets, face lit with contained emotion. He watched Max, Jenna, the park where it started, feeling the weight of a small velvet box in his pocket, pulsing with a future's promise. He took a deep breath, heart pounding like it was his first time doing something this big. "Jenna," he said, voice soft but deep, like a touch. She turned, her hazel eyes catching the sunlight, and the world faded. Kids' laughter, birdsong, the breeze, all stilled, as if the universe paused. He took her hand, their fingers warm and entwined, and led her to the tree's shade, where the RV once stood. "Remember this spot?" he asked, voice thick with memory. She nodded, throat tight. "How could I forget?" she whispered. "It's where I asked for help, where you showed up." William smiled, tears in his eyes like dew on grass. He knelt, the motion as natural as breathing, and opened the box, revealing a simple ring, its stone catching light like a star. "You asked me for food for your son," he began, voice trembling but strong. "I was empty, Jenna, chasing things that didn't matter. You and Max showed me what it means to be whole. Will you marry me?" The words hung, light as petals, heavy as forever. Jenna's heart stopped, then raced, chasing the future his words painted. Tears streamed, but she smiled, a smile of faith, gratitude, love. Before she could answer, Max, playing nearby, heard William and ran over, eyes wide. "What's happening? Why's Mummy crying?" he asked, grabbing William's leg. William laughed through tears. "I'm asking Mummy to stay with us forever. What do you think?" Max frowned, thinking, then asked, serious as only a child can be. "Forever, Daddy." Jenna laughed, tears mixing with the sound, and knelt beside William, pulling Max into a hug. "Yes, baby," she said, voice thick with certainty. "It's forever now." She looked at William, eyes shining, and said, "I do." William slipped the ring on her finger, hands shaking, and under the tree that saw their beginning, they kissed for the first time. It wasn't a fiery passion from old novels Jenna once read. It was real love, deep, healing, safe, like a home with open doors and lit rooms. Max, between them, giggled, not fully understanding but feeling the joy, sweet as the park's flowers. The park seemed to celebrate. The sun burned brighter, kids laughed louder, and the breeze sang softly as if nature cheered. Jenna held William's hand, the ring cool on her finger, a promise etched in her skin. She looked at Max, chasing a butterfly, his smile lighting the world. William pulled her close, arm around her shoulders, and they stood under the tree, hearts in sync, life finally harmonious. Jenna reflected on her path. The RV, its creaks and cold nights, felt like a distant dream, fading at dawn. Hunger, fear, Derek's betrayal, they were real, but no longer her story. She looked at the bench where she'd begged, feeling not shame, but gratitude. That cracked pavement, those swirling leaves, was where her life restarted. She, who'd prayed for a miracle, was living one, not a fairy tale, but a daily miracle, built on patience and the courage to trust again. That night, as Max slept, Jenna and William sat on the porch, stars above like a blanket of promises. The air smelled of lavender, their breaths a soft rhythm. "Forever, right?" she asked, eyeing the ring's glint. William smiled, pulling her close. "Forever," he said, sealing it with a long kiss. When they parted, breathless, they laughed. The sound a melody only they knew. Under that sky, A new family was born, not of blood, but of love, compassion, second chances. As stars shone, Jenna knew the future was as bright as the present. Did you love the story? Remember, even in the driest desert, patient faith blooms, guiding us to an oasis beyond our dreams. Drop a like and subscribe to support the channel. Thanks, and see you next time.